Hello, everyone. I'm Gina. I'm the product designer for Runner and Pipeline Insights. And I'm going to be walking you through kind of like a scenario where I was able to get some really quick feedback from users async about a new feature that we were creating for Runner. And so to just give a little context around what was happening here. So we started with this issue of or this problem where we had so much data that we wanted to show admins about runners that it was no longer readable in all of the viewports. So we were struggling keeping that data readable. The columns were collapsing, the data was becoming overlapped, and not all of that data that was in all of those columns were equally important either, but they were all treated that way. And then we also wanted to add more data. So we were really struggling doing that with the current table design that we were working with. And so what we ended up doing was, I'll just scroll down into this design here. We kind of restructured the data and how it was going to fit in that table. And the most important things here were highlighting that super important data like runner status, to ensure that all your runners are working as expected and being able to run those jobs and pipelines for your developers as expected as well. And then some things like runner type, so project group, etc. And then the owner is also super important. So understanding where that runner was registered, if it was registered in a group or a project or at your instance. And so those were just some examples of the important data there. But to get back to the point of this presentation, what we wanted to do was we ended up in the MR putting this underneath a feature flag. And the reason for that is because we did run solution validation around that design that I was just showing, but we wanted to make sure that it didn't impact those admins' jobs negatively when we released it. So that's why we started with the feature flag. But when we did that, we were able to make some iterations to get there. So for example, the feature flag was really the thing that changed all of the way that the data was displayed here underneath each other. But we were able to move some of the things over underneath, like the IP address, for example, so that some stuff started to stack. So when we got to this MR stage, I realized I was trying to figure out ways of how we could validate this with users real time. And it's pretty difficult to do that with this design change without having them be able to like add comments to an issue. So for this, what we ended up doing was we added a banner to the page to collect their feedback about this new feature. And I think I have a screenshot of it, or I thought I did. So let's see. I don't have it here, but we just added a feedback banner, above the table here so that it linked to an issue and they can leave their feedback. I wasn't really sure what to expect from that. Like I didn't know how helpful that would be for users or if they would even interact with it, to be honest. But it turns out that a lot of them loved it, and we're getting a ton of feedback now, not just about that specific change that we made, but more specifically about things that are even painful for them outside of that change when it comes to runners. So what we did was we created this feedback issue and left 3 different threads open for them to add to. So what's working well, what doesn't work well, and then what should be improved. And then some people were leaving comments like outside of those threads as well, but the threads seem to work pretty well. And what I've been doing now is to kind of like understand or get them to understand that I'm actually reading it and we're doing stuff about it. I've been going through the comments and adding, either replying to them or adding the check mark to tell them that we have an issue that we've opened. And just an example of that is a bunch of them were saying for what should be improved, they brought up some stuff about monitoring runner metrics. So understanding if runners were performing as expected, and getting data around that because we don't provide any data around that right now. And it was awesome to see that. And so what I did was when we were going through the MVC for that type of like monitoring feature, I was able to bring a lot of them into the conversation here to get feedback on our solution there. If I can scroll, there it is. So what I did is I tagged them here. I asked them if they could add some feedback async around it, and they were all interested. They all responded and provided some feedback around that. And I kind of just recorded like a video of how this feature would work so that they would understand it, because when you don't have a clickable prototype for them to play around with, it's kind of harder to understand how the feature would work by the static images. So that's why I recorded the video. And yeah, so it was a super quick way for me to get quick validation of a feature. I'm still going to run moderated testing around this because I want to understand better, like in a full scenario, how it will impact their jobs. But it was a really great way to collect feedback. If anyone else is thinking of or needing to solicit feedback for a new feature, I would say the banner is a great way to do that. And it's another reason why working at GitLab is so great, because we're open source and our users can just come in and comment on issues, and we kind of like build that trust by supporting them there. So that is it. I'll stop sharing and I'll take a look at the doc.
I haven't typed my question in yet, but one thing I think about when I think about these banners is every team doing this, and then we have a million banners. So I'm wondering if we have thought about tracking any of this so we know how many we have in the product currently, when they're going in, when they're going out, that type of stuff, so that we can make sure we're having a reasonable amount of feedback requests in the product at one time.
That is a great idea. I think also it might help to have better, like more specific guidelines of when to use the banner so that we're not just using that to get feedback around new features. Like maybe there needs to be more specific scenarios, I guess, and when to do that. I did not implement, or our team didn't implement tracking onto that banner, so I'm not sure.
And maybe worth just opening an issue so we can talk further about what that looks like, and so we have some sort of idea of how many are out there in the wild, how many we're adding, things like that.
Okay.
And also,
oh, go ahead.
I was just going to add on to what you're talking about, the problem of having, or possible potential problem of having multiple banners in different areas and even working different ways, and causing a problem of disjointedness, is just also making sure that when we implement banners like this to get feedback, we also define sort of an end date to that banner. That might have happened with this one, Gina. I don't know, but just making sure that as a part of implementation is actually, when will this stop? What's the time frame?
Yeah, that's a great point. Is there a specific time frame that we usually go for when we use banners at GitLab?
Gina, when we did this, we had a banner that sent users to a survey, and we had a Qualtrics link that we monitored. So when we hit our target cohort of like, we needed 100 completes, we were able to then like flip the feature flag off and send it to engineering and say, please take the banner down, because it's going to be across .com and self-managed as well. So I think the guideline would just be like, look for a target goal and make one with your PM and say, when we get X amount of information and we feel like we have enough to make a change or make a decision, then you'll want to take it down. But our strategy was like, we created the banner takedown issue the minute we created the banner like implementation issue, so that we knew that we were ready to take it down, and could react quickly, especially when you're not collecting data. You just don't want it sitting there. We also set it so like if you could dismiss the banner for forever. If you took the survey and clicked through, then the banner wouldn't show up again. So the banner has some information in pajamas right now, but it's very sparse. Perhaps maybe getting actual research product into our application could be a solution, so that we aren't using our product componentry intermixed with gathering information. That could be a discussion to have.
Yeah, to Andy's point, I think I've only used like more formal surveys, through Qualtrics as well, looping in the research team. So I do think it's like a cool idea, like this really low cost research, like, but maybe there could be guidelines around like when to do certain levels of research within these banners, or like, where to attach these links, when it would be valuable, etc. Or like when it should be more formal versus lo-fi.
Yeah. And keep in mind the risk too. So if you're sending them off to a survey, there's no expectation of a conversation, right? We're looking for this information. This is helping you. You're asking your questions. You're collecting your data. You're creating an issue, and you maybe forget to monitor it or forget to respond. That might send like a double negative message to the users who are like, I'm trying to give you feedback, and this issue is 6 months old, and no one's responding to my comments. Like that's a lot of risk, and a lot of extra maintenance too on your side of having to monitor the issue and track it.
Yeah, that's a great point. It has been a lot to monitor it, I won't lie. And it's been like something that is constantly on my mind to make sure that they know that I'm listening. That's kind of why I was saying that I was going in and making sure I was responding and reacting to their comments there. So that's a good point.
Justin, you have a comment or question?
No huge reason to state this, since you were already talking about it in the previous thing, but I think this might be the impetus to discover possibly a more holistic solution. This is a gap that we have in our iteration value. Our iteration value is about releasing something and then getting feedback so we can iterate, but we miss that getting feedback part. We don't have a consistent way of doing that. So if we can figure something out, I think this would be awesome.
I just wanted to add kind of a counter, or not counter, but another view, doing it through Qualtrics and stuff like that. Like they define a lot of this value, these limitations, time frame. They define all that stuff for you. But I kind of love the scrappiness of the way that this was implemented, that leads directly into a feedback issue, which is dogfooding for us and like keeping within GitLab. The sheer simplicity of that is, I don't know, I there's something to it that I really like, where it's just all tracked in an issue. It goes directly to an issue. There's no third party involved like Qualtrics. Me personally, sometimes when I click on a, like, I don't click on a banner to take a survey because I don't want to go off into Qualtrics, and like I don't like that sort of stuff. So I don't know. There's something to be said for it being implemented in this way, and maybe we do our own sort of in-house implementation. I don't know.
That's a great point. This has a human aspect to it, especially since, Gina, you were so on top of it and participating and communicating with the feedback, the people giving feedback. that I agree with that sentiment. I ignore those little pop-ups. Give me a rating of 1 to 10. I'm like, no, go away. I'm busy.
Yeah, like if you, in the way that it's implemented here, you're, as a user, feeling like you're dealing with the designer of this feature, and it's kind of endearing. Forms a relationship. Gina spoke about that sort of open source loop that we have with our community. So yeah, there's definitely a benefit of doing this way, or the other way as well.
Thank you for all the feedback and comments there. I'll make sure to open some issues about some of the stuff that we discussed.
Great. I'm gonna hit the stop button now.